Let's go, let's go, and we are live. So, as is usual, I'm going to do a quick audio check here on the YouTube stream. See that if we make absolutely sure that the sound is coming through loud and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, I see that we are indeed getting sound. So, as per usual, I'm going to start out by thanking you, one and all, for joining the stream, and for those whom are watching afterwards, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are very kind. You guys are inspirational. You're excellent. Today, we're going to be talking about a particular dichotomy. So I'm going to do a quick preamble while people join the stream, and then shout out Aaron B. And then we're going to play our theme song, which is Battle Within, and then we will continue. Okay, we will continue. So, this dichotomy is about inspiration versus institutions. As you will find out as we elaborate upon this, this is the dichotomy that cuts across many different aspects of our lives. It cuts across many different domains of human endeavor, both in the individual realm and also in the realm of communities, societies, and so on and so forth. So, it is not necessarily completely encapsulated by these two words, institutions and inspiration and so on and so forth. So in the description, okay, in the description for this video, it states, or let's just talk about the title, right? The title of this stream says, without inspiration, things don't change. And without systems, things do not last. Okay? And since we do want things to change, and we also do want things to last, it behooves us to understand the nature of this particular dichotomy, where it applies, the trade-offs that we need to make, how we need to optimize for one while hedging ourselves against the other, whether it be in our personal lives, in our business lives, with our relationships, with our finances, so on and so forth. Shout out to Jerome, shout out to Bria C, the usual salute Ike. And then Aaron B says, put some respect on the title and description. Ladies and gentlemen, okay? So individual inspiration and charisma and leadership, entrepreneurship, so on and so forth is needed in order to break the mold, in order to shake things up, in order to go outside of the box. But a new mold must be built, ladies and gentlemen. We do need new boxes to be built. We do need boxes in order to live. We do not actually live outside the box. No one actually lives there. Okay, you can think there, you can imagine there, and so on and so forth, but we all live in a box. All right? Unless you walk out completely free and you don't wear pants. Okay? Aaron B, if you ever walked outside the house without pants, without underwear, just going to the local grocery store because, hey, I'm completely outside the box. No. You don't do that. We're all very, very much in a box when we actually live. But time and time again, we need inspiration. We need the individual, so on and so forth, in order to break the mold. So just doing a quick intro on this here, and then I will play the song while more people come in. Shout out to Nicer. Shout out to Ryan Richardson, and then we'll get this on and cracking. On and cracking, ladies and gentlemen. So, as usual, enjoy the theme song, Battle Within.
On the shore, relentless in the war, the legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls, the spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest, the cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding, so sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand, stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching, the spirit and the whim of fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within. Trembling in the haze with the semblance of a blaze. With gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight. Impervious to light, this vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we born Babylon. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, today I am coming at you from an undisclosed location, somewhere outside the Western Hemisphere, let's just say that, far away from the American continent. I am on the road, but, I got my little MiFi thing here, and I got a little setup here because I cannot leave you guys hanging out there without some stimulating intellectual conversations, ladies and gentlemen. So, pardon me if I'm not completely on the ball vis-a-vis viewing the chats. I obviously don't have my trusty thing that I usually have here. What do I usually have here? I have my easel, which is not here. My easel is back in the United States, in the Bay Area of California. So we'll do the best we have with what we got. So let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. I was mentioning that there is a dichotomy which we're going to be talking about today. Dichotomies are very important because they help us to understand the nature of optimization. In other words, what I mean by that is we know that we cannot eat our cake and have it. So eating your cake and having your cake, that's one dichotomy. Everybody knows that. So we need to understand what we're optimizing for. Now, if we're going to optimize for cake eating, then we're not going to be optimizing for cake having. We can't have both of them at the same time. Maybe we can split the difference. Maybe we eat the cake sometimes. Maybe we have the cake other times. In other words, life is full of trade-offs. Life is 100% about trade-offs. There is no balance. So anybody who tells you things like find work-life balance, for example, they're just talking, they're just talking because stuff that people hear out there. There are decisions in life, and then there are consequences to those decisions. There are trade-offs. There is no such thing as balance. There is no balance. You either go this way and you miss out on this, or you go that way and you miss out on the other thing. That's it. There is no having it all, ladies and gentlemen. So dichotomies are important. So today's dichotomy is a broad one. It is a very broad one. And I'll be using the aid of a little typing, maybe with PowerPoint or something, in order to help with the words that we usually use as a way of elucidating the concept. So the title says that inspiration, without inspiration, things do not change. And without systems, things, okay, without systems, things do not last. Let me get a 1 in the chat if, generally speaking, what I am driving at makes sense. Generally speaking, what I'm driving at makes sense. Now, it's a dichotomy that cuts across many different domains in human life, and we're going to talk about all the different domains, right? But with the simple with the simple title of Without Inspiration, things do not change. And without systems, things do not last. I'm seeing ones in the chat. And we have SOBC in the house. SOBC in the house. You've also been modded up. You, my friend, are now a moderator. My apologies for not doing it sooner because you're definitely being a big supporter, hitting up the Cash App, joining the streams, actually getting into the conversation, and so on and so forth. Now, it is a value to us that things change. We do want to change things. We do want to be inspired to think outside the box and to break the mold. Mold breaking is going to be a particular visual that I'm going to be using here because I think it's particularly effective. So we have this value over here called mold breaking, but we also have this value over here called things lasting. In other words, having a mold. We need to have a mold to wake up in the morning and brush our teeth. We actually need a frame. We actually need a box. We actually need something that guides our actions towards destinations. We cannot live in this ephemeral dreamland of goals and inspiration and LSD trips 24/7. It does not work. However, the goals and the inspiration and the LSD trips and the breaking of the box is very important as well. There are many different boxes across our lives. There is not just one box, one system, the man, the system, the institutions. No, there are many institutions, many systems in the individual life and also in the life of a community, each of which at different points in time need to be broken down so that we can reinfuse them with the spirit of the goals that were initially their raison d'etre, the goals for which they were initially created. We need to break things up. We need to shake things up. We need the inspirational leader, for example, to come through. We need Moses to come down from the mountaintop and give us the commandments. We need a Martin Luther King. We need a Mahatma Gandhi. We need a Buddha. We need a Jesus to come through and say, hey, fellow Hebrews, this thing that you guys are doing with the law and the way in which it's done rabbinically, the rabbinical traditions of following the law in this way and being so rigid, I think we need to break up that mold. We need to do these things, and these things are very important because things do not change without them. However, it will not last. The inspiration that is brought down by the leader, the 10 Commandments, will not last unless you actually etch them down in stone and create a new mold, a new particular box to follow. So this is the dichotomy. And now I will go ahead and I will share my screen, okay? And as I mentioned before, I am away, okay? I'm away, I just have my laptop. I have a little MiFi thing. I'm doing my thing here. It is very late where I am, but can't leave you guys hanging. Gotta hit you up at around 5 p.m. Pacific Coast time, right? 8 p.m. Eastern time. Just when I usually like doing my streams during the weekday. But whether I am on the other side of the world, which I currently am, I'm going to make things happen. I say all that to say this. I'm not going to be completely on top of the game regarding checking out the chats and so on and so forth because I'm going to be sharing screens. I don't have my easel and all that kind of stuff. Okay. And Guy Yu says, thank you for your time, Ike. Well, thank you guys also. Thank you guys very much because I too do like to have fellow interlocutors with which we can, with whom I can have these kinds of conversations. So let's go ahead and let me see if I can share my screen here if I don't completely screw this up. Aha, I see that I'm sharing something. Now, the particular two words that I picked in order to start to phrase out, to start to map out, to start to sketch out this dichotomy of which we speak is on the one hand, inspiration, and on the other hand, institutions. I could have picked some other words, but we're going to populate this particular slide here with all kinds of words. So no need to worry, okay? Because it is a dichotomy that permeates the individual level and the group level. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about you as an individual and your inspiration moments, and then also you as an individual with your systems and your routines and your habits and your codes, right? As an individual. But also in the group level, we're going to talk about things such as charisma and leadership, okay? The charismatic leaders that we described earlier, the Jesuses, the Moses, the Buddhas and Gandhis and so on and so forth, the Napoleons of the world. Their inspiration and their charisma and so on and so forth, their mold breaking, and then also on a societal level, the institutions, the cold bricks with which new molds are formed such that things actually exist in the world. For things to actually exist in the world, you need these systems. Inspiration doesn't really exist in the world, is the main argument that I'm making. Again, it's a hypothesis, as usual, and we will go ahead and try to flesh out the hypothesis as we go along here. So, number one, let's go ahead and populate this by putting on the one hand what has to do with inspiration, okay? And we're saying here that inspiration breaks the molds. Right now, we're just going to be talking about certain characteristics of these two sides of the dichotomy so that we can understand more fully what we're talking about. Breaking the mold, thinking outside the box, so on and so forth. We already know. We already know. But let's look at some of the darker sides of this thing, okay? What are the darker of this inspiration game? Okay? And while I am at this point, I would like to mention that there is another way of looking at this thing, which is individual versus institution. And we'll cover that in a little bit. In other words, without individuals, the title could have been, without individuals, things don't change. And without institutions, things don't last. There is always a tension between the individual and the institution. Institution representing tradition, certain ossified, calcified, concretized systems. And there's always a dance being played between these two. Individuals change things. Individuals are inspired to change things, but unless there is a new structure built around the individual, let's say Christianity around Jesus Christ, nothing that he did will actually last. And then maybe that particular structure that was created needs some other individual to arise in order to break it. So, after that little digression, that little tangent, let's continue here. What are some of the things about the inspiration side of the picture that have a downside, let's say? Okay? It does not last. Okay? It does not last. So, let's keep it at the level of the individual right now. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about you and your moments of inspiration. Your moments of inspiration, how long do they last, ladies and gentlemen? Are you inspired 24/7? Because if you are, I'd like to, give me a little bit of that thing that you're on. Whatever it is, as long as it's not addictive, whatever you're smoking, I want it. Whatever inspiration juice you're on that keeps you inspired 24/7, I want it. However, we do know that inspiration is ephemeral, it cannot be counted on. It cannot be counted on. It cannot be trusted. It will come when it comes. If you depend on inspiration in order to go to the gym, if you depend on inspiration in order to take care of your kids, if you depend on inspiration in order to run your business is not going to last very long. Your kids are going to starve to death, and you're going to, let's not be harsh, but you're not going to be in the shape that you want to be in vis-a-vis your physical health. So, inspiration, you decide that you are going to break the mold, change things, and actually start going to the gym. That moment of inspiration is key, but you immediately need to now move to the other side of the ledger. You immediately need to move to the side which creates a system, creates a box for this new routine to exist. Otherwise, it's just gonna vanish like the smoke, which it is. Okay? So now I'm gonna hop back to the other side of the screen and see if I can read some of the chats. Okay? Personally, this screen sharing method seems more cohesive and efficient as opposed to the whiteboard. 100%. And I'm going to get one of those screens that I can write on and share, because I want to share in this particular manner, but I also want to write it out, because there's something about watching someone form the letters that imprints it better into the people whom are watching. Okay. When you watch a teacher write down what he's saying versus just give you slides, it's actually a more effective way of passing that information along, because it's the same reason why when you write things, you actually remember it more. So seeing the guy picking up the pen, moving things actually helps more. So I'm going to get one of those screens and I'm going to share it the way it's being shared right now. And I'm going to be able to write on a tablet. So I'll be able to get the best of all the worlds. So thank you, Jared, for that particular comment. Dope stream, says Michael Graham. Well, you're dope, Michael Graham. Shout out to Chaos Rain and so on and so forth. All right. Might as well tell you where I'm at. I'm in Ghana right now, live from Ghana, West Africa, doing the damn thing. Yeah, it's all gravy, baby. So, inspiration does not last. Inspiration does not last, ladies and gentlemen. Another thing, and that part is obvious, right? We all know that, yeah, you got inspired yesterday, or you fell in love yesterday, but love is not going to keep that relationship going, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry to break it to you. Sorry to break it to you. If you're going to have some kind of a long-term relationship, if you actually want to start a family, whatever it may be, it may even be your kids, as I used in a previous example a minute ago, that inspiration, that love maybe is not going to sustain things. You're going to need to chisel out some things, going to etch some things out in stone. You're going to be like, I'm going to do these particular things. We're going to have a routine. I'm going to have these particular ways of expressing things. And I'm going to need to break that mold from time to time. But I need to immediately, I break a mold, form a new mold. Staying in the zone of no molds, staying perpetually high on LSD is a losing game. Okay? But you need to be able to play both of the sides. No one is saying here that you should become a complete in the box mold person. We're over here talking about how to master subjective and objective consciousness and the world. We want the world to be our oyster. So we need to know how to play the inspiration violin, but at the same time, immediately know how to take that inspiration and routinize it, because inspiration does not last. It is ephemeral, okay? And it can be quite inefficient and disruptive. The inefficient and disruptive aspect of things is that I don't necessarily see as a big uh, deficiency, let's say. It is not a big deficiency to be inefficient and disruptive, because to be disruptive is indeed, by definition, the benefit of the inspiration side of things. To break the mold, to shake up the pattern, to reinvigorate the institutions and the routines with the goals towards which they were directed to begin with, to course correct, if you will, right, is the reason. Okay. And if you watched my other video, which talked about another dichotomy, I'm huge on dichotomies, by the way, the dichotomy between versatility and efficiency. You know that I come down on the side of versatility, even though it's not very efficient, but over the long haul, being jack of all trades will make you survive longer, last longer than the guy who practices just one thing. Okay, that was a long stream, long dichotomy. We related it to fragility and introduced the concept of anti-fragility and so on and so forth. So I don't want to necessarily just make light of it or make it seem like it was particularly simple. But I just mentioned that even though the inspiration side of things is inefficient, my particular proclivities are towards inefficiency anyways, because I like to shake things up. I'm more of an entrepreneurial, creative type, even though I'm an engineer. Okay. So, but it is important for us to know these things that I just mentioned on this left side of things. So if we move on and we had some more words to describe the other side of the picture. Okay? The other side of the picture talks about institutions, systems, routines, molds, boxes, traditions. Those things that actually make things run. Okay? The wheel and the cogs in the wheel. Okay? You know, people like to talk, well, it's just another cog in the wheel. Well, we do need a wheel and we do need cogs in these, in this wheel. Because you just sitting around talking hippie horse crap about being inspired all day, okay? And I like to be provocative with all this kind of stuff. You have to understand the tongue-in-cheek nature of some of my rhetoric, right? Because come on, I'm a songwriter and so on and so forth. So I do spend some time, in inspiration land and some time in hippie horse crap land, writing things and so on and so forth. But okay, but I need to build a wheel. Those things are not wheels, they don't have cogs, they don't actually move anything in this real world. And that goes back to the left side of the dichotomy, which says that inspiration is ephemeral in the sense that it really doesn't do anything. It almost is nebulous, amorphous. It has no form, no shape, and it does not move anything other than moving you to break a mold. Okay? It actually also does not give you the tools by which you build the new mold, which is another reason why you need to look at this left side, the institution, the systems, the routinization, and so on and so forth. Now, you guys may be seeing a theme here because I did make another stream at some point earlier that said something like this. It said that exciting lives require boring routines. And let me get a one in the chat if you guys have seen that particular stream, because I think that it is a direct line. There is a direct through line from that stream to this stream. There's a direct through line from, you know, through many of the through much of the content that is on this channel. But if you saw that particular stream that said that exciting lives, you want to be an exciting writer, sailor, taekwondo champion, whatever, pick your hero. You want to go on the hero's journey, you want to be that particular guy, you want to be the Renaissance man or Renaissance woman or whatever, you want to live that exciting life, well, then you need boring routines. Okay, now that is right in line with this kind of thing. It was only one particular aspect, however, of this much more broader stream, which I'm doing right now. Yes, yes, yes. Sip that sparkling water. So we're going to continue. We're going to continue talking about the right side of this particular PowerPoint. Plain, boring, simple, black and white PowerPoint going down that says that what are the bad sides of the box, though? I think the bad sides of the box we are more kind of conversant with. The bad side of the box, the bad side of institution, the bad side of tradition is that they're not about change by definition. We created this dichotomy earlier with the individual and institutions, and the individual tends to be the agent of change, and the institutions are the agents of continuity. The individual is the agent of change, and the institutions are the agents of continuity. Institutions are not about changing things, they're about continuing what was in the past. Okay? Now, in addition to other things, because I have to interject some of my particular biases as we go along, I already mentioned that on the one hand, I have this entrepreneurial creative side. I'm not really so big on being the most efficient. I rather be more versatile, right? But I do have a conservative disposition in this sense. I think it was Lord Chesterton that says this. If you're walking through, exploring some land, let's say, maybe you bought some land somewhere, or you're just kind of traveling through somewhere and you see a fence. Before you break down that fence, you need to find out who put it up and why. Don't break down the fence until you find out who put it up and why. Let me get a one in the chat if you understand the point that Lord Chesterton was trying to make. And I believe it was Lord Chesterton, or it could have been, yeah, one of them English conservative types. I also have this strong conservative bent in that sense, whereby I very, very much understand the reason why institutions, traditions, routines, fences, borders of all kinds, whether they be conceptual or around the country or whatever, I understand why they exist. And that before you go breaking down borders, breaking down boxes, breaking down molds, you need to thoroughly understand who built it, why it's there, what purpose it serves. Otherwise, you're being very irresponsible, to be honest. Okay? You're being very irresponsible if you don't quite understand that. And I see ones in the chat. So, yes, you get it. That is a personal bias of mine. And I'm fully aware that not everybody has to share that. Some people may be like, no, all walls must come down. Screw all that, and so on and so forth. And we can have arguments for centuries, as we have, about people who are this way and people who are that way. And it's a type of person I tend to believe, by the way. I think that it's a psychological type, and that's why there is no winning the argument. There is no winning the argument between, well, I think we need to hold on to traditions and institutions and be careful with them, versus I think we need to just steamroll them. It's a type of person. We all have these two aspects of us. One tends to dominate more than the other. Okay. So we know that it's not a question of logical argumentation between these two parts, and then one ultimately wins the day. It's just a psychological proclivity and predisposition. Okay. So that's my little intermittent soapbox for the time being. Okay. So we are saying, as we continue down the list, that institutions are not agents of change. That's more for the charismatic leader, okay, from the point of view of a group, or from the point of view of your individual life. Habits. Let's analogize institutions and systems with habits. Habits and your habits and your routines are not agents of change. And that's why you need to, time and time again, Be inspired to change your habits. Because guess what? Just like your habits, institutions get corrupted. And that's the last point, I believe, in the bottom, that they can be corrupted vis-a-vis their original goal, or they just tend to get corrupted anyways because of the second law of thermodynamics. Who knows what the second law of thermodynamics is? Yeah. Now I'm being silly by asking who knows what the second law of thermodynamics is. But we've heard the word entropy, and it is a law. It is a physical law which says that the world, the universe, that is, moves from a state of order towards a state of disorder. In other words, if you have a structure, an ordered state, and this kind of state called an ordered state can be defined conceptually and mathematically, but intuitively we know that a structure built with these piles of wood, you take piles of wood and you build it into a structure, we intuitively know that that is an ordered state, okay? But again, it can be abstractly defined so that you can cut across many different domains and still be able to keep the concept of what an ordered state is. Okay, so you build this structure, it's an ordered state, and you leave for 10,000 years and you come back. You're not going to be surprised if it's all laid up in the rubble now, okay? But if you see a rubble, okay, of a pile of wood, and then you leave and you come back for 10,000 years later and it's ordered itself into a structure, you'll be very surprised. The world moves towards disorder. Your psyche, your institutions, your rituals, your routines, your traditions are also prone to the same defect. Institutions calcify, ossify, and become corrupt. You, your routines and your habits, they calcify, they ossify, and they become corrupt as well. These things exist for the same reasons, or this particular mechanism is operating the same way. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at things from an individual level, and then we'll also be looking at things from the level of institution, so on and so forth. So let me see here if I go back to the chat, see if I'm missing anything. Shout out to Aitwa Ogiamian in the house. How important is place for inspiration? What watch are you wearing? This is Armani. Uh, FR Marco says we're watching. This is an Emporio Armani watch. I actually just got it as a gift from someone over here in Ghana. They gifted me a watch, so I'm sporting it for the masses on YouTube, right? Um, can you clarify what you mean, Aitwa, by when you say place? You mean physical space? Is that what you mean? So go ahead and let me know if that what you mean when you say how important is place for inspiration. Okay. So while Aitwa updates that, we're going to, having created a nice landscape via the use of these short phrases, we've kind of painted a nice boundary around which we put the things that cause change, which we're calling inspiration, or the individual, or the charismatic leader, or whatever, whether you're talking about your individual life or the life of a group, the things that cause change and what it does and what it cannot do. Okay. The fact that it is ephemeral, and by the way, it cannot be trusted. It cannot be trusted to be correct. That is the thing about inspiration. Okay, the thing about inspiration. Young Swift says, we're not the masses, that's disrespectful. Well, yeah, my bad. We're definitely not the masses around here, and uh, proudly so. The people in this channel are not the masses. And let me state another one of my biases, okay? As I said, I have a conservative bent. which is just one side of me. I also have this other side. But another part of being a conservative is understanding hierarchy. So I mentioned one aspect, which is you don't go taking down fences until you understand why those fences were created. You don't go breaking down institutions and traditions until you thoroughly understand what they are, what they're for. Okay? You don't go tearing down conceptions of human nature, roles in society, and so on and so forth until you understand exactly what it is they were created from and the purposes that they serve. Another important aspect of conservatism is hierarchy. In other words, conservatives tend not to have any issue, and I don't like using the word conservatives because I think there's a better kind of psychological mode of description that I think is less charged, because when you start saying words like conservative, people start thinking politics, and politics is for the masses. Okay, politics is for the masses. Okay, that's not what we do over here. But this aspect of conservatism has to do with either you're a believer in hierarchy or you're not. In other words, I'm a thorough believer in hierarchy. In this sense, I believe that every day you wake up to improve yourself, you are waking up in order to increase the inequality in the world. Let me get a one in the chat if you understand what I just said. If you actually believe in self-improvement, then you believe in increasing the inequality in the world. You're fighting every day to get better grades, to do better for your family, to do on and so forth, so that there can be more inequality in the world. It it is true. It is true. It sounds harsh and weird for a particular reason, because it causes you to think. Because a lot of times people bejewel words and phrases such as equality with this kind of a halo. Like, oh, it's always good, egalitarian equality, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, okay. How about you stop trying to improve yourself? How about you just become the lowest common denominator? How about you stop working out? How about you stop studying? How about you stop showing up for conversations such as these in order to edify yourself? Okay. How about you just stop with all your efforts to improve or to increase the inequality in the world? Because that's what you're doing every time. Okay. So the conservative disposition is one that completely agrees and understands that, yes, I'm out there to get to the top of the hierarchy. I have no bones about the fact that there's a hierarchy. As a matter of fact, I think it's just a fact of life. And I don't know why we have conversations about it even. Okay. Whether you're talking about sizes of planets or the heights of trees, or pick whatever you want, pick any parameter, socioeconomic, physical, psychological, material. There is no such thing as equality. And to the extent to which that we can affect change in the world, we tend to, as human beings, affect change that improve ourselves, thereby increasing the inequality in the world. Okay? In life, there's only trade-offs. So this is another dichotomy that perhaps I'll do in another stream, which is the dichotomy between egalitarianism and improvement. Because a lot of people don't tend to look at it that way. People want to be talking about improvement all the time, but also out of the other side of their mouth talk about equality all the time. No, 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 no. There's no free lunch in this life. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot eat your cake and have it. What does it mean, therefore? And as I've mentioned before, this channel is a channel about such dichotomies. At least one aspect of this channel is about such dichotomies, because it's about optimization, understanding that you cannot eat your cake and have it, understanding that, okay, on the one hand, I'm going to need to be doing this, but I'm trading this other thing off. How do I navigate the world in such a way that I'm able to not completely screw things up? Because there is no such thing as balance. There's only choices and consequences. That's how adults are. Most of what I just said, however, is a psychological bias. Okay. I'm completely open to somebody that has the other point of view, and many, many books have been written arguing the other point of view. Okay. I just don't, I don't feel it. Okay. I don't feel that way. I'm very much comfortable in the skin of understanding that, yes, there is a hierarchy, and I'm going to try to get to the top of it in all these different parameters to the best of my particular ability. And I know that I'm leaving many people behind, and that's fine. Aitois did not clarify, but if I can assume that his question had to do with a place, physical space and mental space, very important. But I think that the mental space for inspiration is more important. Hence, my videos on meditation, which we've done 2 parts so far, and we're going to be doing a third and a fourth part after I come back. Okay, after I come back from the trip, we're going to do part 3 and part 4. So, master your subjective consciousness, dealing with being comfortable with the internal environment is key when it comes to being able to tap into the muse, if you will, and inspiration. But also, inspiration requires routine, which is another thing that people inspiration requires routine. Okay, it does. You need to be a professional, and I think that in the video that I made about the war of art, look at that video about the book The War of Art, and that's in the What Ike Reads series. I believe it was part 2 of that. I talked about the book The War of Art, where he talks about fighting resistance, fighting procrastination, communing with the muse and inspiration. And one of the ways to do it, the most important thing that you need to do is to become a professional. In other words, show up, have a routine. If you're writing, make it a time set every day, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., whatever it is, I write songs or whatever it may be in order to actually get that inspiration. So I'm going to read some more of the chats as we go along. Now, over here, I see this other chat from Dionysus. Dionysus says, when you say all habits are corrupted and ossify, is that a matter of timing and one's priorities and ideals changing, or actual habit itself becoming ineffective and unsuitable? Very, 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 very good question. It is both. It is the case that environments change. It is the case that environments change. Let me put it in an evolutionary way. And by evolutionary, I may just mean creatures in habitats with adaptive features. So you never quite know which particular feature is going to suit the times because the environment is fluid. The environment is constantly changing. Okay, I'm just using the analogy here of creature in a habitat having adaptive features, not knowing exactly which one is going to be best. But the environment is constantly changing. So whatever habits you had last week, 10 years ago, is going to become ineffective, unsuitable, and so on and so forth. That is one aspect. That is the trivial aspect, I would say. In other words, there is a fit between the environment and whatever subroutine, system, habit, whatever that you got running. The environment is constantly changing. So at some point, you just got to constantly adjust, adjust, adjust. The second aspect is there is something about, okay, and this one is more speculative, but I think that there is something about having habits that are unchecked, that are unrattled, unshaken by this other aspect of yourself, which is inspirational and mold shattering, that actually makes you less of a master. And Dionysus, let me get a 1, Dionysus, if I'm making sense in this particular regard. The first part, I think you get, environment changing, things changing. Yes, of course, things are changing all the time. Therefore, habits become quote unquote corrupted, right? And ossified, calcified, so on and so forth. But the other aspect is if you want to be a master, you need to be able to break down the mold and rebuild the mold. Otherwise, you're now kind of a robot. And we don't want to be that because we want to be able to play both sides of the fence. Okay. We never want to just be in this nice groove. We want to be able to shake up and rebuild. And I see A1 Dionysus. So, yes, that's what I mean. On the one hand, there is the fit between the habit and the environment. And then on the other hand, there is the aspect of you actually needing to be able to build molds. right? Shatter the mold and rebuild it. Otherwise, I have the intuition that there's something wrong there. Something wrong about you just becoming some kind of robot that kind of plays that. And it will actually lead to a corrupting effect and to use the stupid word I don't like, a toxic effect on your interaction with the world and with other people. So, you guys are, these are very great comments, by the way. You guys are doing the damn thing. Well, what was feminism created for? What was Jim Crow created for? What was redlining created for? Exactly. What was Black Lives Matter created for? You need to know, right? My point is, you need to know. There is an answer to these questions. And with answers, there's always a trivial answer. In other words, a surface level, what's the word I'm looking for? A prima facie, but face value, a face value answer. And then there's always a deeper answer, okay? So looking at the world and seeing things you don't like is one thing. But as a responsible adult, before you strike it down, you need to know why. Because if you don't, you're not necessarily even going to be effective. And I think that that's just from a practical, pragmatic point of view. Okay. And again, this is a psychological disposition thing. Other people are free to have a very different disposition towards moving through life, right? And heck yeah, I'm not trying to be equal. I'm trying to be ahead, says Young Swift. Yeah, that is my kind of disposition too, generally speaking. C.T. Meyer says, it's true, but if you put the work in, then you deserve it. Yes, hence meritocracy. Meritocracy definitely is the ideal that we shoot for. Now, ideal because you never quite hit any of these things. Okay, you never quite hit any of these things. You need a system, and this takes us back to the topic at hand. You have an ideal. An ideal is on the side of inspiration. You say this ideal is equality for all, let's say, or meritocracy, let's say. But these things they share the characteristics of inspiration in the sense that they are ephemeral, they don't actually do anything in the world. In order for stuff to actually happen in the world, you need a system. Take, for example, I want equality. Okay. Or you say, I want the most wealth for the most people. Okay. You're going to need to do something. You're actually going to say, okay, I have a communist system or a capitalist system or capitalist system that is balanced with socialism or this, that, and the other. In other words, you're going to need to take it out of the warm-blooded, goal-oriented inspiration land and put it into the cold world of systems, wheels with cogs in the wheels, with constitutions and institutions and all that boring stuff. Because that's where the world actually happens, right? So I never thought about it in those terms, but you're correct. Bria C says that vis-a-vis the idea of working towards inequality all the time. Then just sent the Cash App. Thank you very much. I don't have all my systems for checking out the Cash App. So Dionysus, thank you very much for hitting up the Cash App. First international stream, ladies and gentlemen, on this channel. So as Kevin Samuel says, shout out to Kevin Samuels, we're building the plane as we fly it. Thomas Sowell, yes, Thomas Sowell, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Yes. And that was yes. Looking forward to part 3 and part 4 in the meditation. I missed the meditation video. I'll have to go back for it. Yes, yes, Latasha Bell. Those are good ones. It's called Why You Should Meditate. Part 1 is about concentration, and part 2 is about equanimity. And yes, I like those, if I may say so myself. And then we continue Why can't I eat my cake and have it? Isn't it not my cake? I never understood that saying. Yeah. That saying is not the best, but I think you understand the spirit of the saying, and that's for Snuggles 668. The spirit of the saying is just basically saying there's no free lunch, that you can't both be in Japan and not be in Japan. It's just some silly simple stuff like that. In other words, life in life you have to make choices and there are consequences to it. There are always trade-offs. You can't just you There's no God perspective where, or as Nietzsche said, even God's perspective is just a perspective, which I found to be a very funny statement. um, and then Young Swift responding to Natasha Bell, it should be previous to before this. Okay, so yes, I don't like that you eat your cake and have it, but I kind of understand that people understand the spirit of it. That's why I use it, and it's so ubiquitous that I use it anyways. But we know what it means. It just means that there's trade-offs, and you cannot have it all. Never, ever. It's just the nature of the universe that certain things just kind of, the more you chase one, the more the other one gets away from you, and you cannot have perfect balance. It just doesn't exist. I hear, yes. There. SOBC, yes. I am in an apartment over here in Ghana, and the smoke detector, uh, I need to go find some batteries for the smoke detector in this apartment because I rented it out and they didn't hook up the batteries apparently. So yeah, so I know the smoke detector is a meme in and of itself. Hearing the smoke detector while you're doing streams, horrible. But I will fix that. I will fix that. So continuing reading the chat, okay. And Tavana Perry says, I'm a little behind the chat, but I agree with you. If a system has not self-destructed, then there are probably some things of value to explore before you seek to change it. Yeah, yeah, I would agree. It takes a system to replace a system. Yes, that's another thing that is just kind of a fact. However, when you have a mob, the mob tends to just want to break things, right? And we're intelligent people. We're not going to ask anything of a mob other than that, right? A mob is going to act like a mob. You know, fishes don't ride bicycles. So what I'm saying is sometimes you need a mob in order to get that change, okay? But don't expect the mob to be actually thinking about a solution, okay? So somebody needs to be thinking about the new system, the new mold that needs to be built. The new mold, the new system that needs to be built. Good man is out there trolling. Um, so you're typically smoke detector person, huh? Usually when people could withstand that noise, it means they have aptitude to be crazy. Ah. How long have you been in Ghana? I'm new to your channel. I've been in Ghana just uh, about 6 days now. About 6 days. Just here for I was in Istanbul prior to that, in Turkey, and then Ghana. And I'm taking footage, by the way, of the trip as we go along, and I will be making some kind of a documentary thing. It's kind of talking over some footage about the trip, sharing ideas, so on and so forth. So, yes. Now, if we go back, ladies and gentlemen, if we go back, and I no longer see, do you guys see the PowerPoint? Let me get a one if you see the PowerPoint, or if it has been, I think I got to reshare it or something. Let me try doing that. Let me try doing that because I no longer see the PowerPoint. So, applications, view, PowerPoint. point. Interesting. Very interesting. That is very interesting indeed. And let me see. Yeah, a black screen. It's I believe it's the internet connection or something like that. Or as O'Shea would say, the white man is holding back my PowerPoint, perhaps. Ha ha ha. So let me try to share in a different way. Let me try to do a share screen. I'm just gonna share my screen, therefore, okay? Because I'm not gonna wait for this thing to make sense or for it to come back. I'm going to try to just share my screen. Yes, share the screen. And then I can switch over to PowerPoint. And then I assume that when I switch over to PowerPoint, you're actually seeing the PowerPoint in my screen right now. Okay. So now I think that we have created a nice little landscape with the black phrases on the top of this. Again, this is a dichotomy. Dichotomies are very important because they help us to understand trade-offs in life. They help us to understand that the nature of not being able to get everything. Okay. So this particular dichotomy has to do with, on the one hand, you have the individual inspiration, and then on the other hand, you have systems, institutions, routines, traditions. Okay. One way to look at it is the individual versus the institution. The topic or the title of this particular stream said, without inspiration, things do not change. And we do want things to change for obvious reasons, but without systems, things do not last. So while things do get corrupted and they need to change constantly, but it will not last without that system. So you may not like Christianity and you think Christianity is antichrist, but without Paul and the rest of the church fathers, if you will, instituting a system around this Jesus character, okay, it will not last. Without the codifying of the laws brought down by this Moses character, it will not last. Without the civil rights bill, written down in Congress and then institutions created to enforce them, however imperfect they may be, the inspiration of the charismatic leaders, the Martin Luther Kings of the world, and so on and so forth, what they did, that moment of inspiration, will not last. There's always a trade-off. When you make things that then last, the problem is they're not perfect. They do not completely embody the goals that you put them in, or that are initially were the impetus for the creating of those particular systems. So hence we start looking at this red stuff here. Okay, what's the red stuff? Let me see if I'm actually sharing this thing correctly. Good. Good. You guys are watching the making of the sausage. Now we see the PowerPoint. Well, thank you very much. I see. Bam. Sorry for all the questions, says Dionysus. No, don't apologize. Sorry for all the questions. Just brings to mind the first chapter of the Tao Te Ching, where one is seeking Fodushin, the immovable mind, to be the constant. You always And then when you bring up the Tao now, this is it's good fodder for all kinds of tangents, which I promise I'm not going to go in all kinds of tangents. But the ability to understand the, the fluidity, if you will, and then on the other hand, rigidity is very important because there is a bias when people talk about enlightenment, and I mean talk. Okay, I'm not really talking about practice, but when people say things like, okay, enlightenment or being woke, whatever particular phraseology in which whatever particular time they're using it, in whichever particular tradition they are talking about, there is always this emphasis on this kind of a fluidity, breaking outside of the matrix. But you cannot live outside the matrix. Yes. And please, um, let me get a one in the chat or let me get some pushback or something. If you understand what I mean, that, bruh, you cannot live outside the matrix. Okay. Even if you've seen the matrix, okay, or like another analogy would be Plato's cave, and I did a book review on the Plato's Republic. So I think part 3 of the What Ike Reads series. Okay, you cannot live outside of a cave. Everybody needs a cave. Everybody needs a matrix. Everybody needs a particular framework through which they apprehend the world. Otherwise, there will be nothing. Okay, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. It's our senses, for example, leave out more than they take in. So think about it. You see patterns, you see the chair, you see the table, you see all these things. And you know, from a physical standpoint, and also from a metaphysical standpoint, we have certain ways of describing them. Substance, electromagnetic waves, this, that, and the other, but they are indeed patterns, right? And just like a harp player that plays certain strings and skips over certain strings and creates a pattern of music, okay, that is the matrix, in other words. Aha, yeah, I mean, I know that I'm saying, things that are seemingly disjointed, but you guys are smart. You know what I'm saying, right? So the patterns, the selective viewing, okay, you don't just go playing all the strings of the harp. You select, and then you create a pattern, just like our perceptions select, and then we see the pattern, okay? You cannot just live in a world where all the strings are playing. It'll be chaos. Even if you know all the strings, okay? But you cannot live there. It's not living, in other words. It's something else. Maybe that's where we go after we die. Maybe we go to the place where all the strings are being plucked. But right here, right now, while we're speaking language, okay, and living in bodies, we play the harp by skipping and creating patterns and creating a framework and creating a matrix. Okay, that is what I am trying to communicate here. So if we go back, to the PowerPoint, ladies and gentlemen, goals versus systems is another thing that I wanted to bring up in this particular, vis-a-vis this particular dichotomy. And I think that goals are in the inspiration side of the ledger. Goals don't exist in reality. Goals are ideals. We talked about a few goals already. We talked about the goal of equality in whichever kind of, or maybe a utilitarian kind of goal. The best or the least amount of suffering for the most amount of people, something like that. These things have to be instantiated via a medium. In other words, we need to create a pattern. Going back to the harp analogy, we need to create some sheet music and then play that music. So the goal in this sense if I were just to continue and beat this harp analogy to death, the goal will be like the sheet music. But until somebody actually plays it, which will be then the creating of the system, nothing's going to actually happen. And the thing about goals, or the thing about systems, is nothing will happen vis-a-vis your goal until you create a system. But a system does not get you the goal. It never does, not perfectly anyways. So you need to understand that when people are talking about, well, but this is the system, you need to follow the system. You need to follow the system. You can't just, oh, it's not a valid attack to say, but how about the goal? What you need to say is, this system misses the goal in this particular way, okay? And it has all these other trade-offs. I have a better system with less trade-offs, and it hits the goal better, okay? Because talking about the goal in the abstract is, come on. It's we all have goals and ideals and so on and so forth, but they cannot be instantiated. They do not mean anything. Okay, they lie in this inspiration side of the ledger in the sense that they don't last. They're kind of ephemeral. They actually don't really exist. Okay, what exists is you need to then take that goal and play it in the medium. In other words, you could play it like the sheet music and the harp, or you can play that goal in the medium of society. In other words, human beings having a nature, society having a nature, or whatever. The medium needs to be accounted for, right? And the difference between the goal and the system is the resistance that the medium gives you, okay? You want equality, let's say, or you want the most amount of wealth for the most people. Well, but you need to then play that out in actual human beings. And actual human beings have psychology, they have a biology, they have a nature, they have certain things that they have the seven deadly sins. They're going to be envious, they're going to be greedy. How do you take this goal and play it in the medium of society? And then that's what the system is. And by the time the goal runs through the medium, it's going to look quite different from what you may have envisioned. But you cannot live in the world where you think that you can just take goals and run it through some kind of mediumless, infinitely malleable medium. Okay, like it's just infinitely changeable and you could just reshape society into something else. No, stone is stone, people are people, water is water. You need to play with the medium. The medium is not going to respect you just because you have a goal. Okay, so that is the goals versus system aspect of this dichotomy. So it may seem simple. I just put some simple line that says, without inspiration, things do not change. And without systems, things do not last. But as I said, these particular kinds of dichotomies intertwine themselves throughout many different layers of human endeavors, from the individual level to the societal level. And we need to be kind of cognizant of them as we go along. So, what else? There's the conscious versus the unconscious. On the conscious end, we have the inspiration, or let's say the individual, the charismatic leader, let's say. There is a conscious need to break the mold. There is a conscious need to do something. And this is not a particularly complex one. The fact that the institution or the system is cold and unconscious, and it's not about changing, and it is all about continuity, is kind of clear. I would draw another direct line between this video and my video that talked about exciting lives requiring boring routines. Exciting lives require boring routines. So, the boring routines, those are the things that you outsource to your unconscious mind. The main thing that I kept repeating in that particular video was that there are things that are not worth the attention of your conscious mind. Okay? If you want to be great at anything, you need to outsource as much as possible to the unconscious. In other words, things like when you wake up, what you eat, how early you arrive to meetings, which planes you fly in, where you sit, which hotels you stay in, all these things should be unconscious. All these things should be routines. All these things, there should be no question as to when you wake up, whether or not you're going to the gym, what you eat, so on and so forth. And we use Joe Rogan as an example for it. Joe Rogan lives a very exciting life. But guess what? His life is filled with routines. He always gets up at a certain time, always runs with his dog, always eating elk, right? All those things are unconscious because his conscious mind needs to focus on the worthwhile endeavors, the endeavors that have to do with improvement towards a particular goal. Okay, so the unconscious versus conscious dichotomy can also fit in this frame that we've created, whereby the conscious side is on the inspiration side, and then the unconscious side is routinized, institutionalized, systematized, put it off away. And one thing to mention here, to reiterate, is you want to clear up space for the conscious mind. Therefore, you want to outsource as much as you can to the unconscious mind. We know this. This is how our system works, anyways. Without your help, this is how it works. When you drive for the first time, it's very conscious and therefore also very chaotic and crazy and very inefficient. Okay? Very inefficient. You want to be efficient? You outsource it to the unconscious. Like riding a bicycle, like driving on the freeway. Once things get outsourced to the unconscious, boom, now you're freed up. You have all this energy now and focus, mental fortitude, so on and so forth, to focus on new things that need to be brought in, new things that need to change, perhaps, new molds that need to be broken. Okay. But then once you do that, you have to form a new mold then, and then take it to the unconscious mind where it's routinized and it's efficient and so on and so forth. So that is another dichotomy. And I will take a pause now to go and look to see if, or should I say, what is going on in the chat. Shout out to everyone again. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Melodious Forever, Young Swift, Einstein. I always thought Joe Rogan was tall. Young Swift says, I always thought Joe Rogan was tall, but then I found out he was 5'9". And then you were crushed. You were forever crushed when you found out that your hero was short. So, Dionysus, can you expound more with that concept from the microcosm of the person and the subconscious being the medium? The subconscious is the medium. That is a very good one. I see that we have our another resident Jungian or Freudian in the house. Okay, so yes. I will use the elephant and the rider analogy. It's one of my favorite analogies. Shout out to Jonathan Haidt. He wrote the book, The Elephant and the Rider. So, the medium is the unconscious. The unconscious is the elephant. The analogy is this. The elephant is the unconscious, and then your conscious mind is the rider. The size here matters, okay? Size always matters. The elephant is bigger. It's got more control. It's actually running the show, as we've seen that everything gets outsourced to the elephant. Everything gets outsourced to the unconscious once the rider has decided. Once you've decided, okay, I've learned how to drive the car on the freeway, boom, You can be driving for 2 hours and not realize, oh my God, what happened? Because the elephant knows already. Okay, just kind of fleshing out this analogy a little bit more. Once the rider decides we're going to the river, the elephant takes the rider to the river. Okay, it is, however, though, okay, speaking about the medium, you need to respect the elephant, and that's why that size differential is given. If the elephant does not want to go to the river, if the elephant decides to go buck wild, if you will, that would be some kind of cattle that goes buck wild. But if it goes crazy, you cannot do anything about it. In other words, you need to respect the medium. Hence, meditative practices, for example, understand the nature of inculcating certain habits, and that you cannot just do whatever you want to the elephant when vis-a-vis the training of the elephant. Okay, there is a way in which the elephant can be trained and ought to be trained. You cannot just do it willy-nilly. And Mr. or Mrs. Dionysus, please let me get a 1 if that begins to address your kind of question about expounding upon how the subconscious or the unconscious is a medium in that regard, right? So the elephant needs to be trained. It needs to be trained in accordance with its nature. You can't just do it any way you want. And it is the more powerful thing. And I should mention that this was all about the thing that, you have a goal, and then the system is you taking that goal and filtering it through the medium that needs to then express that goal, right? The medium will be society. I have a goal. I want people to be as rich as possible. And then the medium will be society. Society has a nature. Okay, you can't just bend it to whatever you want. Hence, you're going to pick. Is it capitalism? Is it socialism? Is it a mix? Is it this? Is it that? Is it Plato's Republic? You have to have a system. Hence, if one thing that this dichotomy should teach us, one thing that this entire dichotomy here should teach us, is that just talking about goals, okay, is only the beginning. We know that there are goals. You need to be talking about systems because these goals need to be instantiated in reality. And reality is always on the right side of the ledger. Reality is always in the institutions, the systems, the routines, the molds, the matrix. Okay? Reality is in the matrix. So if you keep saying, yeah, but Mike, the goal, not everybody's living in bliss yet. Well, it's like, show me your system that guarantees bliss. And then maybe we can talk, right? So what's another thing? This one is written in green. We have here written in green, spirit and desire versus reason. One thing about inspiration is it cannot be trusted to be correct. It is more on the realm, and this particular spirit, desire, reason is a trifecta that Socrates used in describing the soul. He said you have 3 parts to the soul. There is the spirited part. Think of the spirited part as a soldier, because it's often kind of, you're like, spirited part, how's that different from the desiring part? It's different. The desiring part is your stomach and your loins. It just wants to do, it wants to be satisfied. The spirited part has certain things that are beyond it that it is striving towards. So think of valor and honor and things like that. Again, think of the soldierly values, okay? Military values. That's the spirited part, okay? And we understand what to be inspired, to be inspirited, if you will, okay? So desires are also kind of on this side of the ledger as well, in the sense that, okay, you have desires and you have, maybe the desire for, everybody to be living happily. That's definitely on the desire part. It's not so much on the spirited part. But you may also have this spirited part, which gives you inspiration, much more closer to our particular inspirational talk here. And that is separate from reason. That is why I created this aspect as well, just to show us that it is indeed the case that we cannot count on inspiration being reasonable. Okay? Hitler was very inspiring, right? Great charismatic leader. And there'll be many, 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 many great charismatic leaders all through history who have inspired peoples to break all kinds of molds, right? Break all kinds of molds, make all kinds of changes. But this is not the domain of reason. Okay? Reason is over on the cold, institutional spreadsheets and balance sheets and institutions and traditions side of things. Perhaps I shouldn't have mentioned traditions and reason together. But traditions tend to be more reasonable even than just pure inspiration. Okay? So it is important to know that inspiration, this kind of inspiration side, the breaking of the mold side, it's not necessarily tied to reason. I said necessarily, right? Because it could be, right? You could have reasoned it all the way through and then have, because as a leader, as a charismatic leader, for example, you're going to need to appeal to reason and appeal to tradition, and then also have this charisma aspect. The charisma aspect, in particular, has nothing to do with reason. It's just people getting riled up. The charisma aspect is the mob aspect. It is demagoguery. So, no matter how much of a great leader you are, if you're not going to go down the line of being a complete psychopath, you need to know that you're just a big part of what you're doing is participating in mob behavior. You are just the leader of the mob. And just because the mob is screaming doesn't mean anything reasonable or rational is going on. And I will now go over here. Depends on the tradition, though. There you go. Yes. So I'm saying, because the tradition, that's why I quickly backed up from, putting tradition squarely with the reason, because that's another kind of dichotomy in the sense of appealing to tradition is one thing, and then appealing to reason is another thing, and then charisma is another thing. And just using this simple kind of rubrics for thinking about rhetoric, if you will, and leadership. So, however, tradition is on the right side of the ledger. Tradition is on that institutional side of the ledger. So Moses comes down with an inspirational leader, and then you have a tradition. Jesus comes through and he says stuff, and then you have a tradition. Buddha comes through, inspirational leader, breaks molds, and then you have a tradition, right? The tradition can then be reasoned with and thought through, but the moment of inspiration is not something, and you don't even want it to be something reasonable, to be honest with you. True, real, pure inspiration. It's and Dionysus would understand this because he names, or she is naming himself with that particular god that is about pure inspiration. I think Dionysus is the god of wine. So yes, when you have that good wine and you get on top of the table and start dancing and you feel inspired, you want that to be as far away from reason as possible, and with good reason. So, how are we doing on time here? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again. And let me see if I can get this system here to work so that I can give the appropriate shout outs to those of you who supported on the Cash App. So thank you, Dionysus, for and Q-Dog, Quessy Jackson. Thank you very much for the $10 Cash App. Very much appreciated. Okay, very, very much appreciated. And for the rest of you, yes, go ahead. As I mentioned, I am a capitalist, and I am not averse to take in your money. So if you wish to support the channel, please don't hesitate. And soon we'll have the super chats on once we get the right amount of views. So Dionysus is your government name? I have not received yours yet, Dionysus, but it's a it's a I don't have this guy hooked up to this guy, which is the MiFi station, so on and so forth. So maybe the white man is holding yours back. Uh, what else do we have over here? We got reason. I think we probably have one more. Aha, we have one more. Okay. We have the entrepreneur, the individual, and then we have the business, the collective. And this part is key because this part is probably the most practical part. And I know we've been having a fun intellectual conversation so far because that's what we do over here. That is what we do over here. That is what we do over here. Am I a full capitalist though? um, oh my God, yeah. My mind runs a thousand different directions when you say that. One thing I will say, which I alluded to earlier on in the stream, okay? Earlier on in the stream, I said that my particular mode of operation when it comes to discussing ideas, talking about ideas, thinking through ideas, and my intuition is more on the psychological and philosophical level of things. And economics and politics, and I know now that that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of systems, but I find it to create a certain amount of fog and opacity, right? So I'd rather talk about psychological proclivities, such as me liking being 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 on the side of inspiration. Let's say, for example, being an artist, being someone who's on the creative side, being someone who is into versatility, an entrepreneurial type, being someone, and then also let's say being an introvert, having certain kinds of psychological predispositions as a result of that. Okay, someone, and then you have, let's say, liking order, for example, which is a psychological kind of predisposition, as opposed to saying things like capitalism and socialism, because those are way, way, way too high abstractions that kind of just kind of really blur the lines and make everything kind of confusing. But the problem with talking the way I like to talk is it's not enough volume, you know. So we need simple phrases like that. But yes, I don't think there's anyone who's 100% anything. If anything that you get from my channel, it's about trade-offs, right? So to answer your question, yes, as much as it irks me to say, I do understand fully that socialism permeates the system already, and that there are many aspects of socialism that I do 100% accept, just as I accept many aspects of aristocracy along with democracy. I understand, in other words, what makes our democratic system work? Is it more the democratic side of things, or is it the aristocracy side of things, right? And aristocracy, I would mean, for example, let's say the Supreme Court, or let's say meritocracy. Meritocracy is a form of aristocracy, aristocracy meaning the rule of the best, okay? So we say democracy, but it's never a pure democracy. We say capitalism, but it's never a pure capitalism, because you don't want anything, nothing pure, and using the word pure, but those pure concepts cannot exist in the world, because the world is about trade-offs and dichotomies, and there is no such thing as balance. There's just choices and consequences, and so on and so forth. So yes, a little bit of aristocracy which I tend to lean more towards. I prefer the aristocratic parts of things than the democracy parts of things, because the rule of the best. You don't go taking a vote about what to do about your heart murmur, right? You go to the best surgeon you can get access to at the time, right? So democracy is more of a ceremonial thing, I think. But what actually makes a lot of things work has an aristocratic bent to things. In other words, the rule of the best. But democracy is needed as a cohesive mechanism. And I will not belittle the need for these kinds of cohesive mechanisms, these traditions. In other words, we need to believe that we are a democracy in order for us not to kill each other. But in fact, in the living of our lives, we participate in a whole lot of aristocracy and a whole lot of inequality and hierarchy. As we alluded to earlier, when we talk about self improvement, we're constantly trying to improve ourselves so that we can increase the level of inequality in the world. So, that is the way in which I like to talk about these things, as opposed to um, falling hard down on one particular side or the other, right? Because if you're going to have an intellectual conversation, then we can have space to expound upon the whole thing. But when you have to go out there and vote or go out there and pick a particular system, yes, on the system side of things, I know that the rubber meets the road with politics and economics, right? So you do have to make a choice. But on the intellectual side of things, I'd rather go down into the nitty gritty and talk about psychology and talk about philosophy rather than talk about politics and economics. But all of those are welcome. So to close this out, we're going to talk about, on the left side, we have the individual. He's inspired and he's going to start a business. But it is not a business, and this would be a quick one because this one is rather obvious after we've gone through all this other stuff. He is inspired to start a business, but it is not a business, okay? The business does not exist. Okay, the business does not exist until it is no longer dependent upon the individual, until it becomes a system of automated processes and a collective and institution, something cold, until you bring in the bean counters and the managers and so on and so forth, and such that you can then walk away from it. It is not a business yet. Okay? So we need the entrepreneur because we need the risk taker. We need the person to come through and shatter the mold. But whenever you break a mold, you need to understand that you need to pick up the bricks, and the bricks are unchangeable. They're not about change. They're cold, but they are the only ways by which you can embody the spirit of the change you're trying to bring. The only way in which you can bring into reality the spirit of the business, let's say, the spirit of the psychological, economic, or political revolution that you're trying to bring in. And that has to work with the medium. The medium could be you, your unconscious, your particular psychological biases, and so on and so forth, you as a human being and your nature. Or it could be a society, and you cannot just bend things in or without according to their nature. Okay? We're not there yet. Maybe at some point we'll be there, but we're not there yet. We can't do that. Okay? We don't have that ability to bend the spoon with our minds. And even if we could, the spoon can only probably bend in so many ways because it still is a spoon. Okay. So, point being, on the one hand, you need to break down molds. You need to break things down because institutions, habits, so on and so forth, what have you, all these things ossify, calcify, become rigid. Second law of thermodynamics takes over. Things become corrupt. That's just the nature. You cannot escape that. So you need to break these things. But when you break them, you need to pick up these immutable bricks. The bricks are systems, they are institutions, they are traditions. These are the things that will carry your new conception into time, into reality. Otherwise, you're living in the realm of goals, ideals, inspiration, desire, spirit, charisma, and nothing will actually get done. A few things to note here is that perhaps before you take down fences and break down walls, you need to understand why they're there. And you need to be able to replace them with something, okay, that performs the same task, but perhaps in a better way and in a way that is more true. Dionysus asked the question about why do these things become, okay, why do these things become more, why do institutions and systems become corrupt? Well, they do, okay, they do. Mainly on a trivial level because of the changes around. And the trivial level is the more important ones from a societal point of view, because socioeconomic and technological and political changes happen. So maybe that wall is not needed there anymore. But before you take it down, you want to know, oh, it was here for this particular social, economic, technological reason. Those no longer exist. Perhaps a different arrangement of socio-economic, political, and technological conditions now exist. And I have this new way of meeting the goals that this old wall was meeting. And that is actually being a solution-oriented person, as opposed to being a mob and a leader of the mob that is just trying to break things down. But from an individual point of view, you need to understand that when you're inspired to do things, either to start a business or do whatever, you need to immediately start going into the land of how do I make it a system? How do I instantiate it into the world? Otherwise, it's highly dependent on me and my inspiration, and that does not last. And we want things to last. And if even if it's for egotistical reasons such as legacy and so on and so forth, right? We do want things to last. So, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a successful stream so far because the internet has not completely screwed me over here in Ghana. And I would like to read some of the chats. Next time, I'll probably open up the stream in order to get some people in here. But I was scared the internet would fail us. Right now, nice. I think we did fairly well on time. Wow. Was that almost 2 hours? Almost 2 hours. Almost 2 hours talking about the phrase without inspiration, things don't change. And without institutions, things don't last. I did not know that would take 2 hours. So let me read some of this. And that's a fair point. Ibitoru Kuki. That's a fair point. I understand now what you mean about trade-offs, the way of business. I feel cynical about meritocracy because uneven advantage, yes. Slash situation occupied by different people, yes. Can you please provide the PDF slash okay, I can do that. Probably create some Google Doc thing and then leave it in the chat, which I will pin or put it in the community tab. Yes, that'd be a good thing. I will do something in the community tab that says, here is the PowerPoint of all these words that we threw up there vis-a-vis the dichotomy. Okay. Shout out to Ike O'Shea Duke, brought me here, man. Great content. Well, thank you very much. Nice days. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone else who showed up for this one. I definitely appreciate you guys. And shout out one more time to Q Dog, and shout out to Dionysus for hitting up the Cash App. I'm sure that Dionysus, your Cash App will show up. It tends to do weird things or take its time for whatever particular reason. Okay. And thanks to the unspecialist. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I will be leaving the PowerPoint. Let's see here. What's the suggestion here? Gerald says, okay, thank you for the PDF, PowerPoint files. Would you be able to do the same for the following sequential live streams? Yes, I will be doing that. And the next live stream will probably be the next part on meditation. Okay, meditation part 3, why you should meditate part 3, which is about sensory clarity. And then part 4 will be space for freedom. As I mentioned, I'll also documenting my trip. So I will be, and speaking of O'Shea Duke Jackson, by the way, speaking of O'Shea, now that I'm over here in Africa, he made a video not recently perhaps, but in his King Ganda channel, he talked about people thinking Africa is cheap. Just like any other thing in life, there are trade-offs. So certain services are cheap, certain, food is cheap. Africa's cheap to visit, but certain other things are not cheap. And then it also depends, just like everywhere else, you get what you pay for. Okay. If you want great Wi-Fi and you want to be in a place with a lot of security and no issues and good services and so on and so forth, then you're going to pay. We think there's nothing free. So, but to the point about the certain things are cheap and certain things are not, certain services are free, certain food is cheap to visit. But if you're going to buy certain kinds of goods that are not produced here, makes sense, right? It's going to cost more because of imports, this, that, and the other, right? And you want to live in certain parts of, you want to stay in cantonments like where I'm at right now, or East Legon in Ghana, you're going to pay up. You're going to pay up, but it's well worth it, I would say. It's very well worth it, because you get, outside the United States, generally speaking, when it comes to services, customer service, let's just call it, right? The services of the hotel staff, let's say if you're staying at a hotel, for example, it's just a way above and beyond anything you can ever experience without shelling out ridiculous amounts of money in the United States. There are only certain places where you get that kind of service in the United States. Let's say you stay at the suite at the Wynn, for example, one of the nice suites at the Wynn. Yes, you'll get that kind of service. But over here, right, just at a regular hotel, not paying anything crazy, you'll get great service in that regard. So since O'Shea Duke Jackson was mentioned, and I was thinking about it the other day when I actually moved in here, I just wanted to mention that thing. So yes, in life, you get what you pay for. Shout out to everyone that showed up for the chat. Shout out to Nicer. Shout out to Q Dog, Questy Jackson. Shout out to Aaron B. Shout out to SODC, and everyone else, Young Swift, the usual characters in the house. It is about 3 a.m. where I'm at, so maybe I'll go ahead and catch some sleep, or who knows? Maybe I'll go out in the town, look for a little bit of trouble. Peace.
shed waters in our boss. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Trembling in the haze with the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within.